Hello and welcome back to Breaking the Barrier. I'm your host, Rebel Sjeklocha, and today I have the privilege of sitting down with an accomplished cowgirl, a champion for rodeo, a heck of a great role model, and if you couldn't tell quite yet, a dear friend of mine, Miss Micah Barnes. Micah, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, Rebel Grace.
Micah and I became fast friends last year as state title holders, myself as Miss Rodeo Nebraska and Micah as Miss Rodeo Iowa. And despite the fact that we argued often about which state has better corn, we're still close friends. So happy to report on that. But Micah, for those who don't know you, give a little bit of backstory and talk about your involvement in rodeo.
Yeah. In 1950, my grandpa Bob Barnes, along with his wife Danita Barnes, started Barnes PRCA Rodeo Company. So I am a third generation part of that. I graduated from Alta High School here in the northwest corner of Iowa. I college rodeoed. I played collegiate basketball, and I'm a current WPRA and PRCA card holder, as well as being a college rodeo coach.
Awesome. So from the production side of things to your competitive experiences to now your coaching experience, there's really no shortage of things to talk about. But I'd like to kind of rewind a little bit. Take us back to young Micah and where your spark and passion for rodeo started.
I like to start the story with the fact that I've been riding since before I was born, I like to say. My mom has pictures of her carrying the American flag with pregnant Micah, or I guess pregnant mom with Micah and her son. Not pregnant Micah. But I don't really remember a lot being young. That wasn't rodeo. My mom tells me my first words were bull for bull and footy for horse, because I was just always in love with the animal side of it. And I still am today. That's why I flank the livestock that you see in the rough stock events. But a lot of my earliest memories was just traveling the whole country, basically rodeoing, whether it was following my dad, who was a professional rodeo cowboy in the saddle bronc riding, steer wrestling, and calf roping, or seeing it from the production side of the rodeos that we put on. It was just a lot of traveling. I remember it was a lot of family that necessarily wasn't blood, but that you gained over time, kind of that we experienced being rodeo queens, like that sash sisterhood. You get that part of rodeo being competitors or being part of the production.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll go back to the production piece in a minute, but you also are very competitive in the arena. And something that I think is a really huge bragging point of yours is you're a very salty breakaway roper, but you didn't actually pick up a rope until you were a bit older. Talk about that.
I always knew I wanted to be a breakaway roper. Growing up, the horses that we got to compete on were normally just whatever pickup horse we could catch at the time. We didn't really buy finished horses because that's not really where our money went. It meant to feeding our livestock. That was part of the production, and then riding whatever came along with that. And so I knew I always wanted to be a roper, but we never really had a horse, and we never really got to practice either. So it kind of started with me just roping the bale a lot. I remember from a young age, I think it was 8th grade-ish year through junior year, I would just rope a bale of hay. And I was roping with my dad's high school rope, which I actually I roped for my first 2 years of college with my dad's high school rope. That's when I found out from the actual ropers that you're not supposed to rope with a rope that old. So that was a learning experience for me. And we also learned that in breakaway roping, you cut your rope. So you don't rope with the long calf roping rope in the breakaway. But I remember the first time that I actually roped competitively was a high school rodeo in Mobile, Iowa. It was a rodeo that we put on, but also I got to compete in it. And I remember I didn't remember entering because my parents had entered me, but my dad had entered me, and I was very nervous. And I had never worked for it. And Dad had said, if you just go out there and you touch this calf with your rope, I'll buy you a piece of pizza. And me, being the slight competitive child that I was I'm going to catch the whole dang thing. You're going to buy me a whole pizza. I remember I rode Showboat, who was my mom's flag horse, and then my dad would pick up on him as well. We called him the Wonder Pony because I would tie goats on him, and if I wanted to barrel race on him, he'd let me, but he really wasn't a barrel horse. And we got out kind of late because obviously we had never been through a barrier. And right before the 30-second timer went off, I caught my whole calf. So
wow.
I remember so excited. Granted, I didn't pull my slack, so I ended up catching the back foot. But in high school, it's catch as catch can. So it still counted.
You still got your pizza.
yeah, I still got my pizza. It was the best day. And from there, I was just kind of I always wanted to rope. I took a step back from rodeo in college to kind of focus on sports. And then junior year came around and I was like, I want to get back to roping. And I had still been practicing during this time, but not competing. Breakaway in the WPRA wasn't really a big thing up north here during that time. So it was just kind of at home whenever I was able to, we would rope. And then junior year, I started our rodeo team at BV. I was the only one, so I got an independent rodeo. And I remember Mike Vikowski, he's a calf roper from Wisconsin. My dad was talking to him about something. He said, so what horse are you going to send Micah to rope on? And Dad said, oh, just probably whatever pickup horse is available. And Mr. Mike did not like that. He's like, you cannot send this girl to compete in college rodeo on some raggedy old pickup horse. Mr. Mike actually let me borrow his horse. His name was Brinks. It was one of his practice horse. And I remember my very first short go that I qualified on Brinks, and I was so scared. And we were at nope, that was a different one. We were at, I think it was Fargo, North Dakota. And it was the middle of the snow in North Dakota in November. There's a lot of snow. And we were all just trying to stay warm inside. You couldn't really warm up anywhere. And I was so nervous, but it ended up being all right. I got to make the short go, I think, at every rodeo. From the next 2 years, I made a short go at every arena. So that was pretty special to me.
Yeah, very cool.
Towards the end of the fall semester of my junior year, we had to send Brinks back, but he had another horse that he wanted me to try out. His name was Vegas, and he told me, before he had gone, he was a little head shy because he'd been beat a little bit. But he said he doesn't really like men, but if he likes you, he's going to work really well for you. And Vegas, I remember the first time I went to try him out, and he just ran off at the beginning, like when we were doing our circles, and I was like, all right, we're going to get along just fine. And I ended up bringing Vegas home to use him for a semester of college rodeo. We made our very first short go together at South Dakota. I remember I talked to some of my teammates because this was like maybe a week of having him. And I was like, if I make this short go here, I'm going to pull a Jackie Crawford and I'm going to rope with my hair down because I thought it was the coolest thing. So I made the short go and I'd curled my hair for the performance. And I went to go, we rode back to the box to get ready for short go. And we had 3, I think, bareback riders before we went. And I was like, okay, I can do this. I can rope my hair down. It's going to be fine. And right before I went out there, I put back in a because I could not. I don't know why. It was just, that was one of my fond memories about that. And I ended up buying Vegas after that first semester because we had so much success. And he's who I bought my permit with. And we actually ended up qualifying for the 2022 American together, which was honestly just outstanding. And one of my most fondest memories. Right after that, when I got back from Texas, he got kind of sick and passed away. So making that American was really special for me, not only because it was such a big stepping stone in my roping experience, but also because I got to do it with him. And it was our last kind of rendezvous together. He took me out to California, to Cal Poly, to rodeo out there and kind of be under the assistant. I got assistant coach for Coach Londo, which was incredible. One of the highlights of my career. But yeah, that was a really special horse for me.
Very cool. So the Cal Poly Rodeo program is very established and distinguished in the college rodeo space. So serving as an assistant coach is a pretty big deal. What are some things you learned from being a mentor and assuming that role at such an esteemed program?
When I first went to Cal Poly, I was a little nervous just because I had never met any of these kids before. And I was stepping into a role of kind of coaching them while being the same age or just a smidge older than them. And for a while, I kind of struggled with how do I gain respect? How do I teach them something that they already know? And how do I kind of be that person for them? And, it honestly just took a little bit of time getting to know everybody, kind of getting to know their style of competing, the style that they need to be coached at. Coach Londo was amazing in helping with that too. I remember we had like weekly talks, like, I don't know what I'm doing. You come back to Iowa, and I'm just saying, like, you need to have more confidence in yourself. And I think that was the biggest takeaway being at Cal Poly was just learning to have confidence in myself and my ability. And then kind of that bond that you establish through rodeo. From the young age, I met those people. And so I had that kind of relationship, but seeing it at a different level, seeing it from a coaching standpoint, helping those kids grow, not only as competitors, but people, was just really awe-inspiring for me.
Awesome. So being on the production side, in the arena as a contestant, and then on the other side as a rodeo coach, you've kind of made a full circle in terms of your different experiences. But something I want you to talk more about, with Barnes PRCA Rodeo, you are kind of a jack of all trades. A quick brag on Micah. I remember we were at the Minnesota Horse Expo at the rodeo last year, and during the steer wrestling, these steers were pretty naughty and weren't really wanting to go out of the out gate. And here comes Micah in her full garb, Miss Rodeo Iowa and all, ropes the steer and drags it out of the arena. The crowd is on their feet because here comes this sparkly lipsticked girl dragging the steer out of the arena. And it was really cool because you are obviously very talented in that regard, but you just stepped in wherever was needed, and you fill that role for the stock contracting firm often. On that note, you are also pretty popular behind the chutes. Okay, I shouldn't have worded it like that. You also flank bulls and broncs for the rodeo company. Talk about learning how to do that, and I mean that's pretty BA to have a girl back there doing those things.
It wasn't something super common going around up here. Miss Bold, she does it, and she is, top tier. So if you can be compared to Miss Bold, it's a good life to have. But I think my very first time was at a high school rodeo. Dad wasn't there, and I think Mary was competing. I remember that, and JP, that one of the men that was there helping us, was like, "Hey, you want to come play horse?" And I was like, "All right, sure." Because, like I said, I loved everything about the horses and the bulls. I just love being a part of it. And so I was like, "Yeah, if I can be a part back here, perfect. I'll just do whatever." And from there, it kind of just skyrocketed. I really loved it. When I went to college at BV, I got a flank there, and for a little bit, like the first couple rodeos that we put on as a production side of it, competing, it was a little nerve wracking because there's not girls behind the bucking chutes, and growing up, we were always taught like girls don't go behind the bucking chutes, that's not their place, whatever. And so being back there at first, I was a little nervous because I was like, they are not going to respect me. They're going to be like, why are you back here? And but it turned out to be, after the first couple, I kind of bucked off a couple in the bronc ring. From there, they were like, all right, don't mess with Micah. Be nice to her. She'll give you a good flank. And if not, out the back you go. But no, it was really nice. I kind of formed a band of brothers back there. I knew that, if I had any problems, that they would help me out. We kind of had a little bet, not really a bet, but kind of a trade-off going on. I had a roughie always push my calf, and I would go back there and I'd flank his horse. So it kind of was a nice little trade-off. I always had a calf pusher at rodeos. That's where I first met you.
Yeah.
Your brother.
The first time I met Micah, she walked up to me and said, "I know your brother." And I said, "I'm sorry." And I mean that in the most endearing way. I do love my brother, but yeah, if you know, you know. So talk a little bit about the importance of, break it down at a fourth grade level, the importance of having a good flank man behind the chutes, what a difference that can make in the rough stock events, and kind of the strategy behind that.
Yeah, absolutely. Contrary to popular belief, we talk about a lot of state queens, is the flank strap is not there to hurt the animal, it's there to help them. So whether that be helping them find that correct motion, because the flank strap is really just what it is teaching those animals to kick out instead of kicking up and over. So when you go up and over, that's when they hurt themselves. And if you can teach them to kind of kick up and out to get that flank strap off, it's going to be a lot safer for the competitors. It's going to be a lot safer for the animals as well. And when you're a flank person or flank man, flank woman, whatever it is, your job is to know what flank goes on what animal. So not only horse flanks go on horses, obviously, but also what that horse or what that bull needs as a flank. Some of our older horses, they need a tighter flank, going with that age. Because if you start out a horse when they're young and you have a tight flank on them, you can't get tighter as they progress. I know I was always taught when we were younger, the younger stock, they get a looser flank because they don't need a lot of encouragement because they're kind of wilder. But once they get older and they kind of understand their job, that's when, if you need to give them like a little hip, or if you need to tighten up their cinch a little bit, you can, because you have that wiggle room to work with. So a lot of it is, in the bull riding is if you flank it straight across their hips, if you hip them so you go over one but not the other. And it's also knowing how tight, because some horses, if you put their flank too tight, they're not going to go out there and buck. They're just going to sit there and spin in circles. And if you put that flank too loose, they're just going to run off. So it's kind of tricky finding that happy medium in between. But once you do it for a while, you kind of understand it. I was really lucky. If I didn't, I'd just be like, hey, Dad, what do you want on this horse? And he'd either say average, or he'd say a little more snug, But normally it's getting on the horse buckles. You want those buckles under your flank to kind of barely touch when you pull it together. The bulls, they're a lot easier to flank because you don't have to pull it when you come out. But normally it's just, that says just snug across, and they're pretty good.
Very good. So there's a lot of moving parts when you're putting on a rodeo. Obviously on the rough stock side, as we're visiting about now, but also bringing the timed event cattle, pulling the barrier each time, just, keeping things moving at a solid pace. For people who aren't familiar or who haven't been on the production side of a rodeo before, talk about all the things that you have to keep in mind and all the considerations you have to keep the rodeo flowing smoothly.
Absolutely. From a contestant point of view, you're here because this is your livelihood. But as production side, you have to remember you are putting on a show. You want your product to be bought again and again. So if you come to a rodeo as a first-time fan and you're out there and you see some calf rubber being on his horse afterwards, you're probably not going to come back again. Or if you go there and you sit through a 4-hour-long rodeo performance, you're probably not going to come back again, because it's just too long. So there's a lot going involved, whether it's keeping, everything running smoothly. So you want that 2-hour-ish performance time, or it's making sure that all your attitudes are happy, because you are representing not just yourself and not just the company that you're competing at, not just that rodeo, but you're also representing that whole livelihood of Western industry. You're representing the cowboys that came before you, those who laid that stepping zone, and you're also kind of representing those that are going to come after you. So you want to leave that positive impact, whether you're a competitor, a producer, a clown, whatever it is. Before every rodeo, we have a production meeting. So that means we sit down with the clowns, we sit down with the rodeo queens, the announcers, anybody that needs to know. So whether that be lighting crew, if you have an indoor arena, people behind the scenes that are running the tractors for your drag at the barrel races, or, just those who are opening fence and panels for you, everybody's involved. And a lot of it you don't see, you don't see those people behind the scenes that are flanking horses or even sorting horses and bulls to keep that going. Because if you have to stop what you're doing to go back, and sort horses, or you have to stop to go down the other end of the arena and sort calves on there, your performance is not going to go very well. It's going to take a lot longer. And most of the time your boss man's not going to be too thrilled with that. So there's a lot of moving parts, and everybody has their own different job, but every job is just as important as the next. Just because you may not see them does not mean their job is not important. I like to think of the NFR. You never see the people in the back pens that bring those bucking horses up or those bulls up one at a time. But without them, you're not going to have production. Just like whoever pushes your calves and steers, I know at the NFR, they have one guy pushing every single steer, every single calf. And that's a thankless job in itself. But if you don't have somebody in that position, keeping those cattle ready to go, again, that's a time waster. So it's really about making sure your production is moving smoothly while also putting on a good show for those involved.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Something we talk a lot about as rodeo queens, or just in general in this space, is about animal welfare and just making sure that all the animals used during a rodeo are well taken care of. And especially from a stock contractor point of view, that's even more important. Of course, they're our livelihood, but we also care deeply about them, and many of them serve vital purposes. We like to claim that bucking horses are bred to buck because their genetics truly go back to that purpose. But talk about the care that these animals receive and just how important that piece is.
That was one of the first things that we were taught when we were younger, is your animals' needs come before your own. So that meant we fed before we had breakfast, and before we had supper, right after performance, we were feeding. And you were young, you're like, I just want to go eat, or I just want to go to bed, but you can't, because these animals, they rely on you. And like we had kind of talked about, without these animals, you don't have a livelihood. So the way I explain it is, we can't make our horses and bulls buck. they are born that way, just like you said. There's a lot of care that goes into picking the right mare, the right stud, the right cow, the right bull. It's all genetics. So when you look at, running bred horses or barrel horses, it's the same thing. We want really great athletic mares and really great athletic studs to have that athletic child or that athletic foal. And sometimes, Mother Nature happens and it doesn't work out, but that doesn't mean that, the grandchild or the grand foal, whatever you want to call it, isn't going to be a great bucking horse either. One of our really good horses, her name was Crystal Springs. She was a 1977 Sawbronc Horse of the Year. Her colts did not buck very well, but her colts, so like her grand colts, they were outstanding. So sometimes it does skip that generation, but there's nothing you can do really about that. It's just treating every foal and every calf, the same way you'd want to be treated, because you never know down the line, some are late bloomers. I know Sister Haley Kinsley's horse, that horse, I think she said she didn't start running her until she was 9 or 11 or something like that. And I think a lot of it is just giving those horses and those cattle room to grow into themselves. We personally don't really buck our horses until they're 4, just so they are really ready for it. Their bones are kind of ready. They're stronger, because if you have some guy toting off the side of you, you want to be strong enough to take that tug. But it really is. They are part of our family. We definitely have our favorites of them. They don't get special treatment, but they are a little like when they come in the bucking chute, like, all right, this is mine. So like, you be nice to it or you're going to hear from me. But I know there's horses out there, they get their own chiropractics. They have their own nutritionalists. They have shoers they come in. Because if you aren't taking care of your stock, they're not going to last. Then there's not going to be any longevity to it. And it's going to be kind of a lot of rollover, which doesn't save you money. It's not good for your company. It's not good for your fans. Because, some fans, they fall in love with horses just same as you and I do. So it's really just involving those animals, making them part of your family and giving them the best they can be to help them grow to that high potential.
Mm-hmm. Barnes PRCA Rodeo has provided stock to the NFR countless times. Talk about the stock selection process and some of your favorites that you've taken to Vegas.
Absolutely. So the stock contractors every year, they can send in nominations for their stock, whether they want to send in 1 or 100. That's their right. And then a committee will go through and pick them. A lot of times that committee will call upon, your top 15 cowboys and be like, hey, we're looking at these horses. What do you think about it? Or, hey, between these 2 bulls, what's your favorite? Because the cowboys that are going there, they want kind of an input too. So being able to have a relationship, not only with the crew picking, but also with your cowboys. Because if you have a horse that's outstanding in the arena, but they fight in the chutes, that might not be somebody you want to take out there. Or you have this outstanding horse and the cowboys really think you want to take it. But what if they're not a great indoor horse? Or if, I'm small, what if they like those big outdoors, like Pendleton, like Cheyenne? They might not do as well in that indoor. So it's having a good relationship with those cowboys, but also, seeing what you think should go. It's not just about the money that you get sending them there. It's not just about having your name there. It's about sending something that people can compete on. That's going to kind of have a positive look out for not only your committee, but also for the NFR, because nobody wants to send a 14-point horse there and kind of be the laughing stock of the NFR. They want to send stock that is going to win the round or have a good chance at placing. Every horse and every bull that gets sent there, they are guaranteed to be buck once. Some get buck twice, and that's just kind of luck of the draw. I know last year we had a bull out Saturday night. So the Saturday that we were competing for Miss Rodeo America, we had a bull out and he ended up winning the round. So I remember my family all got to go to South Point where we were staying for the Miss Rodeo America pageant. We did not get to go down there because we were,
probably eating Cheez-Its in bed or something.
I know. I was so excited because I watched the bull riding and I was, my God, I'm going to have to see Dad talk now because Dad doesn't normally talk in front of people like that. And I was really excited and I fell asleep way before they even got to the award show.
Thank God for the Cowboy Channel. You can go back and rewatch it.
We also had last year Backdoor Johnny, who was just this really big gray mare, and she is massive. And that was really special because she was in a pen with another horse of ours that we had sold previously. And so that was really special, just seeing that bloodline be in Thomas and Mack being represented by 2 different committees and 2 different partnerships, which was really special because you have the same bloodlines, but they go two different directions, which is really unique.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, I feel like on any given topic that we've covered so far, we could go down a rabbit hole and talk forever about each specific thing. But I do want to talk a little bit about um, the passion you have for sharing the story of rodeo and getting new people involved. Obviously, serving as Miss Rodeo Iowa last year, that was a big part of that, but you were doing that before you ever had that title, and you're continuing to do that after you have passed it on. So talk about the ways that you have gotten other people involved and why you care so much about that.
Absolutely. It's easy to care when it's your whole livelihood. It's kind of been everything I've known. Like, yes, I've been playing sports, but I grew into this family. Like, this is where I was born. This is where I was meant to be. And a lot of it is just kind of protecting that way of life because this is how we kind of stay connected. Rodeoing, people like to say it's a big family, and it really is. It's just that's just a big feeling where, coast to coast, people, and that, if I break down in Texas or I am really sick and I need a horse traveled up for me, I know people who will help me with that. And I think of just being part of that family is something super special and super unique that not a lot of people get to experience. As an athlete, I remember like you would have teammates who didn't even want what was best for you. But yet you're out here rodeoing as a competitor and you have your own competition who will give you their horse, they will give you their rope, whatever you may need, because they want you to succeed just as much as you personally do. So I think that needs to be shared too, because I think, looking at this way of life and looking at the morals and the values that we hold so dearly is something that a lot of people could really benefit from. And there is a lot of misconceptions about rodeo that I think need to be addressed. And I think that's kind of our job as rodeo queens was to not only educate the public about it, but kind of be that stepping block between the public and the rodeo because, they don't get to talk to a lot of people. And that was kind of our job. And being that spokesperson and kind of helping put those lives to ease or, telling them this, hey, this is actually the truth about what you see. And this is why this happens. This is why that horse has to be tied in or this is what a flank does. It kind of helps the understanding and it grows not only the appreciation, but the support you have because without our fans and without that support of sponsors, you don't get a rodeo. So not only do the contestants not have rodeos to go to, they have to find something else to do for work, but also our family that's 3 generations going on has to find a different way of work because without rodeo, we don't really have anything, So it's really important that we kind of keep those traditions and keep those values alive and well because, someday if you kind of get lackadaisy with it, they could all go away.
Yeah, absolutely. Your platform last year was Be the Light, which was oh so fitting for you. Talk a little bit about that and how you're continuing that now.
Yes, ma'am. So my platform, Be the Light, came from Matthew 5:16, which reads, let your light shine so that others may see your good deeds and give glory to your Father that is in heaven. Because for me, I didn't want a crown or a title to define who I was. I knew who I was and I was a child of God. And we're all put on this earth for different reasons. Some of us are athletes, some of us are dancers, some of us are teachers, but it's what we do with our time on earth that is really beneficial. And it's how we use that to glorify our Father in heaven. So my thought was, I want everything I do to shed light on rodeo, but also give back to my Father because without him, we're all nothing. So for me, that was really special because it kind of took the focus off of myself and it helped me realize that this title is meant for bigger things. If I was going to be Miss Rodeo America or not, I knew that I was going to be okay because my identity didn't lie in a title or a single verb. I wanted to be multidimensional and be all that God had called me to be. I didn't want to be somebody who changed everything about themselves because I felt like society had told me to. I wanted to be confident in who I was and who God had called me to be and be all that was. And that way I could, in response, kind of help those, who might have been struggling. Because growing up, I was not the super popular pretty girl. I was the one that was in the back playing in the dirt. And, I knew a lot of girls who looked at me and they said, hey, like, I never knew you were going to be a rodeo queen. Maybe since you did, I could too. And I think that was kind of the stepping stone for that was, shedding light on the gospel, shedding light on rodeo, but also shedding light that you can be more than just one thing. You can be all that God has called you to be.
Very powerful. So one of the neatest things about you is when you decide to do something, you go all in. So not having a rope in your hand since you were an infant. Obviously, you were around rodeo, but you really dove headfirst into the breakaway. You dove headfirst into being Miss Rodeo Iowa without much prior queen experience. What advice would you give somebody who is looking to try something new that maybe does not have a ton of background, whether it's rodeo or not?
I would say just take the dive, do your research. There's always people who can help you. For me, like, I know, Rebel, you can attest to this. My transformation from Miss Rodeo Iowa in January to Miss Rodeo Iowa in December was a completely different person. That was because I used those friends around me and I asked for help. Rebel had to help me with my queen wings. I cannot tell you how many times, because Rebel always had these beautiful wings and mine was like this, just flat, and I couldn't ever get it.
For people outside of the queen space, wings are the hair you tease around your ears to let your earrings show. I know that's pressing information that everyone was dying to be informed on today, but if you take nothing away from this podcast, that's what the wings are. We weren't flying anywhere.
You should know Rebel had great wings.
And now I have no hair around my ears.
Yeah, that's what these babies are, is you tease your hair too much as a rodeo queen and they come out.
Anyway, sorry to interrupt. Continue.
No, you're good. But definitely use those resources around you. If you have a question or you want to do something, just reach out and ask somebody. I guarantee you, people are not as scary as they perceive. I had a lot of people tell me that, you know what, you're an intimidating person because you have severe, you have big eyes. And I was like, I know, thank you. But I think a lot of it is just taking that first step, being courageous. The thing that really drove me as Iowa, but when I decided to run, was I was like, you know what, I think it'd be fun, but that's a lot of time. That's a lot of effort. I don't really fit into that role. Like, I don't know. And there is this saying, there was a previous queen. She told me, she's like, in 10 years from now, are you going to look back and regret not doing it? And on that same token, when I was an athlete and I was having trouble, wanting to get up at 6 o'clock waking up to go to 6 o'clock weightlifting. And it was, at the end of your life, you're going to meet the Lord and he's going to be like, well done, good and faithful servant. Look at all these things you did. But he's also going to sit there and he's going to look at what you could have done if you weren't scared. And I knew for me, I didn't want to go through my life and be scared. So I was like, you know what, even if this isn't the road for me, I know that there's going to be great memories attached. I'm going to make those connections that I wouldn't be able to meet anywhere else. And I'm going to make memories with these friends that are going to last me a lifetime. So whether that is, your rodeo journey, that is your queening journey, that is, maybe you want to play an instrument for the first time or you want to sing in a choir, do it. Because you never know what kind of journey your life can take from that. You don't know the people you meet or the dimensions and the doors that could open up for you because you took that first step and were not, you're fearless, basically.
Awesome. Well, it's impossible to put you in a box because you constantly push yourself to try new things. And that's why, as I said earlier, I think we could have an episode in all three different buckets, from the contracting to competing to coaching. But I think this has been a really good glimpse into your experiences and who you are. So thank you for sharing that with us. Is there anything that we left out that you want people to know?
How much should I embarrass Rebel right now?
Hey now. Yeah, well, she didn't continue, so I'm going to take this opportunity to wrap things up. But thank you so much for tuning in to this week's episode of Breaking the Barrier. Once again, this is Micah Barnes of Barnes PRCA Rodeo, a rodeo contestant, a rodeo coach, and a fabulous human being. Thank you for tuning in. And as a reminder, all previous episodes of Breaking the Barrier are available on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, as well as now on YouTube. So in addition to listening to the episode, if you feel so compelled, you can hop on YouTube at Breaking the Barrier Podcast and watch the recordings that we're doing as well. So thanks, and we'll see you next week.